wow, that protein we tried today didn't work. That's very interesting. They see everything as an opportunity to learn, grow, collect data. And so I don't even let my students call it a practice room anymore. Literally, they call it research lab.
Wow.
Because when they're in there, what we've tried to establish here in the crew is a complete spirit of positive growth, positive fight, positive challenge in all areas, in the way we approach the horn, so that when we do mess up, and we want to mess up, we actually want to go to the point of failure every day, because you'll never know what your limitations are unless you actually exceed them. How can you stretch further if you've never reached your limitations? So I think understanding what your limitations are is an extremely good thing. And it's especially good if you're a performer, because as Clevenger used to say, you don't necessarily want to play with complete abandon. You want to play with controlled abandon.
Yeah.
And so, I'm sure you're the same way, Dave. I mean, both of us play well over 100 concerts a year, 125 concerts a year. And when I have rehearsals, I don't see rehearsals as an opportunity to learn the music anymore. I already know the music.
Yeah, exactly.
For me,
absolutely. Yeah, go in.
The rehearsals are for me to check what are my parameters, so that when I am performing, I know just how far my boundaries are of quality. Because, you know what, hate to say it, but we're paid to sound good. And so, we have to sound good.
Well, we have to find where
as a result, we find out just where we need to go. Because if we go a little too far, we might not sound good, and that's not good for our jobs. So the same is true of when I'm teaching kids to win auditions. In the end, it's nothing more than a sales presentation. You're going and trying to sell a product to a buyer. And so we focus on making sure we sell our product in the most saleable and convincing way. And that means sometimes hiding your junk.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like hiding your Achilles heel.
Yep, exactly.
Are you getting a little bit of feedback when I talk? I'm getting a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. I could try.
I'm going to try to. Okay, I just
yeah. Now I'm.
Okay.
Oh,
so
yeah, that's why you froze on me.
Yeah, sorry about that.
It was a good vision, though.
Yeah. So, could you talk a little bit about crew? What it reminds me of is like the U.S. Postal team, training for the Tour de France. It's like a training group for any other competitive sports, any other competitive athletics. And I feel like there's strength in a group. And if the group can lift everybody else up, right? So imagine that we're, instead of just a horn studio, now like this chat, right? All 200, 300 people.
Yep.
We're one group and we're all lifting each other up. And so with one person, bringing an idea and helping another person, then we help everybody. Like all rising tides float ships.
Yeah.
Could you talk about that a little bit with crew? And what is crew?
The basic idea of the crew, it's a fun old story, and ideally it's very Darwinian, that the strength of the pack is greater than the strength of the lone wolf. And it goes way back to literally when I was just a very young professional, just starting out. There were buddies of mine, and we used to hang out. We would watch Star Trek together, and I'm talking to the original Star Trek. And that's where my nickname, the Captain, came from. They thought that I operated a lot like Captain Kirk. And, so anyway, but the cool thing about the old Star Trek, and everybody who's a Trekker knows this, is that Kirk knows that he had to have Spock and had to have Bones and had to have Scotty. That Kirk wouldn't be as good as Kirk is without his peeps. And so, back in the day, I had lots of good friends that we would hang out, which were, Brian Thomas and Todd Bowermaster, John Ring, Eric Rusk.
Yeah.
You know, I had Eric out to Hawaii when I was playing principal horn out there, and we used to hang out, and we were all just kind of dreaming together. Bruce Hennis was part of that gang, and we would. Dave Griffin, believe it or not, Dave Griffin, who was a colleague of yours, was one of the earliest crew guys. Dave and I used to take trips up to Michigan, to my family's place in the Upper Peninsula, Michigan, and literally stand outside and just talk shop all day long about horn.
No kidding.
Oh yeah, we'd take these crazy trips that were horn intensives, and dream the big dream. And so the crew came out of that, and obviously as I started teaching, I understood that if you wish to grow, you need to learn from every possible source.
Yeah.
And this actually is probably
just got goosebumps.
Yeah. Maybe the best lesson I ever got from Dale Clevenger was not in a studio. It was not in the concert hall.
Yeah.
I used to, when I did study with him, and I only studied with him 1 year. Remember, I got a job February of my freshman year at Northwestern.
Wow.
So I didn't do the whole 4 years of every week with Dale. But I did back in the day. I was so hungry that I would stand on Sheridan Road knowing exactly when Clevenger was going to drive by with his MDC 26 Mercedes on his way to play Friday afternoon orchestra hall concerts.
Yeah.
And he'd see me hitchhiking on the road and go, "Bill, why are you hitchhiking? Where are you going?" And I'd say, "I'm going to orchestra hall." And he said, "Well, I'm going there too. Get in." So every Friday, this became kind of a thing where he'd pick me up and drive me down to the hall. And I saw that as an extra lesson.
Yeah.
Because I could just sit there and pick his brains for an hour.
Yeah.
Well, we got to the Grant Park Garage, which you know.
Yep.
And we're like driving down into the bowels of the earth, 6 floors under the ground. And he finally finds a place to park. And he looks over at me and he goes, "I see the way you're looking at me." And I was scared. He goes, "I know that look. I've seen that look before." And I really was about to, wet myself. I was so scared. And he goes, "You want to be the best, don't you?" Now, all of a sudden, it's like the voice of God. I said, "Yeah." He goes, "You want to know how?" And when he said that, literally, since we were 6 floors under the ground, this light shone down and there was a brass ring for me to grab. And I was like, the words from heaven were about to be given to me.
Yeah.
And so I said, "Yes." He says, "Well, now you're #1 at Northwestern. You're #1 at Civic. You're playing next to a Chicago Symphony at 18. That's all good. Doesn't make you the best." He says, "If you want to be the best, you got to check your ego at the door, and you find anyone, anywhere that's got something you don't have that you want. And you go up to them and you say, 'I like the way you do that. Show me how you do that. Tell me how you do that.' And you copy them." And I was listening. And he goes, "And when you've copied everybody, guess what? You're the best." So I've always, literally, I've always operated that even though I'm very happy to give all of the information I know, I look at everybody, and not just horn players, everybody in every aspect of my life with an empty cup. I'm always looking to see what can I steal from that student. It might be a beginner student who comes to me, and the way they put their lips on the horn and play a middle C is more efficient than mine. Maybe. I'm going to figure out how they do it, and I'm going to assimilate it. I'm like the Borg king of assimilating horn players, And I've operated this a long way. And the thing is, I make sure that my crew understands that everyone is valid. Everyone has worth, and that we're all part of this team and we're growing together. And if you keep this attitude that you're not the best, you're always trying to grow, you're always trying to learn, that's how we do it, and we do it together. And I will not tolerate jerks in my studio.
Yeah.
I hate to remind everybody this, but you got to be good people. And the reputation, I learned this the hard way. I had people give me junk now. I'm almost 60. They'll say, "I remember you when you were at intermediate camper at Interlochen and you used to do this." Yeah, okay. But we have to remember you're making your reputation now when you're a student. It's not when you get a job. And the people who may be on your committee might remember you being a real, hot dog at some point in your life, and you might not get a job because of that. So be careful. But as far as the crew goes, the whole thing has grown as a collective, just like you say, just the way Lance Armstrong knows that he couldn't have won unless he's got other guys leading the peloton for a while to take the pressure off. We work that way, and we practice together. We play excerpts for one another. We're constantly grooving the sales pitch so that when we go to perform, we're selling our best product. Yeah.
Wow. Fantastic. Well, this is a good place for us. Excuse me. This is a good place for us to transition. So we've answered a lot of my questions here. I guess the one question I would like to know is, what advice could you give to the young professional musician right now who might be, not without their lessons, without their ensembles? How would you tell them to stay motivated? How could you help them with, ideas to practice, like learning to rap?
Yeah. Well, I do think that everybody now should take this as an opportunity to research great recordings, not just the first thing that comes up on Spotify, not the thing that comes up on YouTube.
Okay.
I hate to say it, but I find that a lot of the younger generation, even though they have more information available to them than at any point in history, they're not as concerned with the quality of it. When I was a kid, I had to literally spend all day riding my bicycle to the train, taking the train to Chicago, using my money that I used cleaning out.
What's behind you?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you could look what's behind me and what's behind you. Look, those are all things that I worked at. Look at the LPs on the top rack too. I mean, all of that stuff's that I had to pay for, and it took better part of a day to get each one of those.
Yeah.
And so I would really recommend that you guys, the young people, get good recordings, not just the first thing that comes up. Get great recordings and take the time to listen to old horn players.
Can I interrupt? Can we go with some of your recommendations? What are some of your top 5 favorite recordings?
Oh, well, it depends on the composers. I think a lot of different orchestras are better at certain things than others. For me, I grew up in Chicago, so I'm very partial to the Vienna and the Chicago Mahler recordings.
Yes.
But if I was listening to Debussy, I'd probably listen to Montreal or one of the European Concertgebouw. Or actually Boston. Boston was a French style orchestra. There's a lot to be learned. Again, don't get into the head that your city is better than everyone else, or that your tradition is the only tradition. That's a very limiting thing. And one of the reasons I love what we're trying to do here in Houston is that when we win jobs, and we win jobs all over the gamut as far as styles of horn playing, no one really knows we're from Houston until the screen comes down. Because I'm not teaching them necessarily to play Brahms 3 the way I was taught. Because I was actually quite influenced by the old Dale Clevenger recordings of Brahms.
I know, absolutely. I mean, I have to say those are some of my favorite recordings. The recording of VerMeulen playing Brahms.
Absolutely. I really I'm like the least racist horn teacher around, because I'm not interested in the color of your horn or the style or whatever. I'm interested in music. And I think what's transitioned is that 50 years ago, if you were from a certain city, you could be pretty much assured you could work in these other cities. And now that's all changed. Yeah. We have jet-setting conductors that aren't really adhering to a very specific style. There are a few orchestras left that are very into their style, and I respect that. I have no problem with that. It's largely based on either a long tradition or a concert hall that style works well with. Yeah. But by and large, our industry, what's being hired now are people that make Brahms sound like Brahms, Mahler sound like Mahler, Beethoven sound like Beethoven. And that means you have to open your ears to lots of different colors. And I almost feel sorry for the young horn players today, because the digital recording age has homogenized horn sound so much more than it used to be when I was young.
Yeah,
When I
I'm
was
going
young,
to interrupt you really
yeah,
quick. I used to play this game where I'd go and we'd listen to the classical radio station. We'd try to guess the orchestra based on the sound from the horn section. I'm sure
exactly.
you did that too, but you could always tell, New York, you could always tell Chicago, you could always tell like Berlin,
Hmm.
for sure Cleveland, and then,
Yep.
everything else was kind of like maybe that's Boston,
Yep.
and then, oh, of course, London too.
London, the way they articulated in London was unique to them, especially in the 70s and 60s.
So I'd love to stop really quick and take some questions for the next 15 minutes.
Great.
From the public. So there have been some questions back. I'll just go back a little bit. So Hugo's online, so everyone say hi.
Hey, Hugo.
Hugo, I know, like,
Buena vida.
he's struggling a little bit because the Met just went on. They're going to be laid off for the next month. So everyone give a big hug to my hermano Hugo, and all the hugs to all the Met musicians. Really sorry for what they're going through.
Dan Hawkins there. Hey, Dan.
Danielle. Yeah, Danielle Kuhlman's there. Let's see.
Hey, man, there's so many crew here. I love it.
Absolutely. Mika F. Horn says, endurance. Wants to talk a little bit about endurance. Yeah.
Oh, I'd love to talk about endurance.
Okay.
I never use the word endurance ever in my teaching. I use the word efficiency. I actually believe that the great majority of horn players use way too much engagement with their face.
I agree.
That really the amount of engagement should be only what's appropriate and necessary. When we think about using muscles, it's already not efficient. If you stand up out of the chair and then you sit down, did you think about how engaged your thigh muscles would be, or your quadriceps, or your psoas muscle? You didn't think about any of that stuff. You just got up, you got down, and your body engaged what it needed to automatically, autonomically, unconsciously. That is the crux of efficient horn playing. Understanding that the mind leads the body, and that the art form must and shall precede and dictate the craft. That's truth.
Okay. Great. So let's see. We also have some questions. I'm just, are there any books that you would recommend for high horn playing? Or any suggestions you would do for high horn playing?
Yeah, well, for me, again, how you get to the next, I would use Mastery of the Harmonic series. How you get, there's a horn. How you get upstairs should be just the next note. For me, I've developed a system that I call the path, that if I'm buzzing, let's say I'm going, and I'm just glissandoing up to high C. When I'm playing, certain notes are available, that harmonic series. And at some point when I'm starting on a middle C, it's not going to want to stay a middle C anymore. It's going to have to become an E. If you do it correctly, you will get this little bump. And as long as these bumps exist, you can go pretty much as high as you want. I mean, think about it. Trumpet players play a lot higher than us. Doesn't make them better. So if I go, you hear every single note, almost like keys on a piano, pop out. And again, that's the high C is not a high C. It's like a medium high C. You could go.
Holy smokes!
And that's on F horn. And I'm not even sweating yet. I mean, I'm not even thinking about it yet, because honestly, none of this is hard. It's all, if we had the time, maybe another time, Dave, you and I can do this again, and I'd be happy to take a whole hour and explain how blasted easy the horn is.
That's
I mean,
awesome.
The physics of it, when you learn the acoustical physics of sound production, the lips want to vibrate. You don't have to make them vibrate.
Yes.
Buzz happens. It happens.
Well,
it happens.
You always use your lip visualizer, your mouth
the visualizer. I use the visualizer. Here's one here.
And it's available on your website?
Basically, what I've discovered, and this is cool because everyone remembers this from the Farkas embouchure book.
Yeah.
Where he's got pictures of everybody's embouchure. But the really interesting thing is that I've taken this kind of a step or three further, in that I've diagnosed over 1,000 buzz streams. I remember now, I've been in this business now 41 years, Dave. So I've had a chance to really listen to the way people buzz. And most horn players have a buzz stream that's set up a lot like a 5-speed transmission of a car.
Okay.
So if I start on a low B flat and I come up, whoa, man, I get in the mid-low range and I hadn't made the shift. We even call it the shift, don't we?
Yep.
Yeah, so it's a lot like you're playing, doing a car. So then you make the shift. You can start in second. Whoa, about D above middle C, I just slipped on a banana peel. And it's the reason why a lot of people, when they're coming down on, say, till, they really have trouble navigating that arpeggio and setting up the last 2 notes, because there's a break there. There's a shift. Whether you know it or not, for most horn players, there are about 4 areas of what I call turbulence within the buzz stream. It's not smooth. And my engineer brain said, why for 200 years have we been making excuses for why we suck and saying, well, gosh, I'm a high horn player or I'm a low horn player, largely based on the fact that they can't really navigate through these breaks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so I thought, well, this doesn't make any sense, because cars aren't being made as a 5-speed manual as a general rule now. Most cars are automatics. They have variable transmissions, and they've developed a buzz stream that could go. Okay, so I just went from low B flat to high B flat, right?
Yeah.
No bumps, no areas of turbulence. But Dave, did you notice that was a double high B flat?
Yeah, I did.
So honestly, if you put it on the horn, whoa, hello, double high B flat again. I didn't even break a sweat.
It's amazing.
You see, it's
Could you talk a little bit about sound production?
Absolutely.
Just making a really nice, warm, beautiful sound.
Again, we're going back to the premise that most horn players use too much engagement. So what we need to discover is how much is too much, how much is too little. If I play with maximum engagement, let's say I take an E above middle C on the horn pitch, and I play it as tight as I can, like the worst student with really bad air, it's going to sound. You hear this all the time. So then if I use lots of air, because most horn teachers are saying use more air, use more air. If I do that, it's not going to help the sound. Bad, right? So now that's one side of stupid.
Yeah.
You know, and we know by science that if there's one side of stupid, there has to be an equal and opposite side of stupid, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So the equal and opposite side of stupid would be no engagement at all, zero. Literally like I'm dead. So if I use hardly any air and no embouchure, sounds bad.
Yeah.
So the question is then, who is the determinant of how much engagement you need? You and your conscious brain, or just the unconscious body giving birth to that note? This is where I differ from a lot of horn schools, that I really think that the amount of engagement should happen naturally, not consciously. We may be smart, sentient, carbon-based life forms, but we're not that smart to know more than what the acoustical physics of the horn requires. So let's take the corpse face, the dead face, and just let the air give life to the note. Once the minute you just let the air fill up the note, you're birthing the note, you get a nice sound with only the amount of engagement necessary. Now, we're always talking about horn sound in terms of core versus resonance.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And some schools really concentrate on getting a lot of core.
Okay.
And other schools say, no, you got to get that bloom on the sound, that absolute beautiful resonance on the sound. I think there's a balance between the two. I think that the basic horn sound has to be a mix. You start with core just like you'd start with a really good cake. And then you put this beautiful frosting of resonance on top of it. So that's why I use this thing called the path to help the horn teach me where that chord is. If I take a G and I start to glissando down, at some point it's not going to be a G anymore. It has to become an E.
Yes.
And I don't want to tell the horn where that E is. I mean, honestly, guys, we're talking about a piece of metal here and some flesh, tiny little muscle flesh. And in the battle between metal and flesh, who do you think's going to win? Metal wins 100% of the time. So I take the G. At some point, that E just popped into place. And did you notice it was just a solid brick sound? It was just awesome.
Yes.
That's the horn teaching me, hey, this is where I want to play, bud. Please let me do my job. And that's a large part of the way I teach the foundation of the horn, is that I try to set up my students in the most efficient means of playing based on their physiology, their equipment, their oral cavity, their lip size, their tooth structure, their tongue shape, so that it's custom fit like they've gone to Paris for a fitting, you know, for a piece of clothing. It's not just ready to wear stuff here. And again, the one dictating factor is the bar. How high, that beautiful sound that you're going for, that high detailed caliber of perfect mix of core versus resonance. It's like tasting a fine wine when you're listening to just how you come in on a note, just how you sustain it, just how you release it, and the overall beauty in the sound. And there's not just one beautiful sound. I would not want to play Pavane like I play Brahms 3.
Absolutely. It's being flexible.
You have to be flexible.
You teach that lesson so well.
Yeah.
So every excerpt has its own style, and every excerpt has its own kind of gear, so to speak. And also, you were able to teach every excerpt has its own kind of trick. Like, this is how we approach each excerpt, and this is how the committee will hear this excerpt the best.
Yeah.
I want to
formulas.
I want to interrupt real quick. Just say quick hi to Jen Montone. She's watching.
Hey, Jen.
Hey, from Philadelphia. Big hug.
She was nice enough to let me talk to her students at Curtis just about a month ago, and I always love going to Curtis. They're awesome there.
We have time for a couple quick more questions. Someone asked, what are 3 to 5 of your favorite recordings?
Wow. Okay. Favorite recordings, I would say Mahler 3 with Abato and Vienna.
Wow. Okay.
That's a good one. If I have to stay with horn-related stuff, I was a huge fan of like the old Bauman double horn recording.
Yes.
That one just killed me when I was young, and it really inspired me.
Are you talking about like the Glier?
Well, no, that's a solo. The Glier was also very, very influential to me. But he did a recording where he did Leopold Mozart and the Witt Concerto and things like that. It was just crazy, amazing double concerto album that I thought was just poetry.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of the old Mahler 5 with Dale. I think
which
with
recording?
Schulte recording.
Yeah, wow.
That's the one I grew up with. To be honest, if I'm listening for phrasing, I'm going to listen to Barbra Streisand and Frank Sinatra.
Yes.
And so
that was one of my greatest lessons with Dale.
It's really tough to choose. I'll tell you, the Kleiber Rosenkavalier is just killer good.
Yeah.
That's just an amazing recording of Rosenkavalier.
Yeah. I'm going to interject real quick. One of the most inspirational recordings that you let me listen to was Mahler 9 with Giulini.
That's a great one. Yeah.
It's Chicago, Giulini, Mahler 9.
Yeah.
That recording changed my life.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you for that.
Oh, sure. Yeah. That's a terrific recording.
The last movement is like poetry in motion.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it says, what's y'all's favorite movement from the Glier? And that's from...
Favorite movement from the Glier is the second movement for sure.
Wow.
Second movement is a great movement. I love the Glier. I've played it a lot of times. I've performed it over 30 times. And it was sort of a party piece of mine earlier in my solo career. And I still like to play it. But that being said, the second movement is unto itself a complete, well-structured movement The third movement, in my opinion, is the weakest of the movements, largely because the ending is just rushed. If he had just taken a little more time with the ending, it would have been a far greater finish to the concerto.
You mean you don't like Russian sailor dances?
Oh, I like that. I don't like the that whole bit to the end. Those lines to the end just are too rushed for me. He doesn't develop the coda of the concerto, for my opinion.
Yeah. F. Horn Patrick from Toronto asked, he's a good friend of mine. He asked, what are some of your most memorable concerts?
I did Mahler 5 in the Musikverein with Eschenbach years ago.
Wow.
That was pretty epic.
And like, you know, what do you remember about it being inspirational? What about it was like really life-changing or really inspirational or memorable?
The whole orchestra played fabulously that night. They just were very, very
and that happens sometimes. Everything just fires together.
And it was our first European tour that we did when that happened. It was in the Musikverein. Eschenbach was so good. The orchestra was really right there with him. And first time we had played in the Musikverein, the first time I had played in the Musikverein. So it was a very big deal. It was the end of an almost 3-week tour where we had done 17 Mahler 5s on this tour. And this was the final concert. So we had been, you know, ramping up and getting battle tough. And we just killed it that night. That was a really a memorable performance. My old Glier with Honolulu years ago was really good. You know what? I'll tell you one that you all can go to on YouTube is my 1991 solo recital. I did a solo recital that is insane. I started with Villanelle, then I did Glier Nocturne, then I did Amphoré, then I did Strauss Andante, then I did Bernard Haydn Sonata, then I did a Mendelssohn clarinet piece on the horn, a 3-movement clarinet piece, and then I finished an encore with Bride of the Waves, my own transcription of Bride of the Waves and Herbert Clark. That to me, now that I look back at it, that's maybe one of my very best performances ever.
Wow.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. I know what I'm doing after this chat. I'm going to go watch that recital.
I think you'll like it, Dave. It's kind of fun.
Hey, thank you. I guess lastly, well, I mean, I have 2 last things. So number 1, moving forward, how would you tell someone to look for a horn teacher and a horn studio? I hear a lot of people looking for, like, you know, undergrad programs or master's programs. We have about 4 minutes before we get cut off. So.
Right. There are 5 criteria when you're looking for a music school. First and foremost is the teacher. And you need to audition your teacher. I have people come in all the time that are interested in Rice, and I love it when they come in early, like a couple months before they audition, and they audition me. I have no problem with that because you're investing a lot of your life, a lot of your money, a lot of your dream in someone, and they might be a really famous teacher, but maybe they don't fit with you. And I fully understand that I'm kind of really rah-rah, super gung-ho dude, which is a little intense for some people, and it might not be the right fit for someone who doesn't like my lovingly blunt way of addressing things. I mean, I like to think that I might tell someone something is not great, but I always give them a solution to fix it. But again, I'm not right for everybody. So audition the teacher you want or you're interested in. Secondly, look at the crew environment and make sure that your peer environment is something that you're not horribly better or horribly worse than. You want an environment that you're going to fit into and grow within. Wow. Look at the performance environments in the school to make sure that you've got something where you can be trying out what you're being taught without fear of getting fired like you went in the real world. Yeah. See if there's performance opportunities outside of the school so that you can try out what you're being taught and see if it actually works in the real world. And then 5th, make sure that you have a good orchestra to listen to so you can look at that orchestra perform and dream how you're going to take that person's job someday.
Absolutely. Wow. Thank you, Bill. We have 2 minutes left. The last question I needed to ask, why do we need musicians and classical music more than ever right now?
I'll tell you exactly why. Every civilization is known for something. Some civilizations are known for their war-making ability, some for their architecture, some for their, sciences. But every civilization is known for their art. And it comes up to this one basic statement: art alone endures. It must be. It is the reflection of who we are. And so, more than ever, guys, pursue your art. Understand that you're just a great artist who happens to play the horn. You're using this to express the soul of who we are as people and to carry on the wonderful words of the great composers of the past and give life to the great composers of now and in the future. So please